Pretty much everyone who's ever tried to write songs or compose a piece of music has struggled at some point along the process. Sometimes inspiration can strike at the right time and you can get through a whole song almost instantaneously. But that doesn't happen for everyone, and if it does, it's very rare. A lot of times musicians will spend hours, days, months trying to get a song together, and a lot of times this can get pretty demoralizing if you're struggling to come up with ideas or get ones that work well together. Today we're going to talk about some strategies that I've developed and used over the years when writing songs, and specifically how you can take one riff and develop a song around it. This is very common with a lot of guitar players, where we'll come up with a bunch of riffs, but we don't have any direction for a song, and we just have all these extra riffs sitting around. Some of them are really awesome and we really like them, but we don't know what to do with them or how to turn them into a song. First thing you should understand about songwriting is that you don't need a lot of riffs to write an entire song. Listen to a few of your favorite songs, and I bet you can count on one hand how many riffs they're playing throughout that whole song. A lot of really great songs, especially in metal and rock music, have anywhere from 2 to 5 riffs. Oftentimes we'll use a very common song structure, a verse, chorus, and a bridge. Sometimes those sections aren't even going to have different riffs. If you want a song to be catchy and hold the listener's attention, you want to have some repetition and something that the listener can latch onto and keep them engaged with the song. If you're changing riffs every 5 seconds and there's 20 riffs in your song, it just becomes a riff salad with not really any structure for how a song is actually going to be. The first thing you want to do when you're coming up with a song, of course, is you're going to need a riff. If you need help writing a riff to start out with, check out one of the videos in my description. I have one for making riffs and one specifically designed for making drop tuning riffs. So check those out if you need help making riffs. And then once you have a cool riff, come back to this video and we'll work on exploring it. One very important thing to keep in mind when you're writing a song is make sure you're sticking with a tempo and that you have a time signature or some kind of beat to carry you through the song. If you don't know what a time signature or a tempo is, don't worry about it too much. Easiest way to stick with it is to set up a metronome or a drum beat while you're playing and trying to come up with your song. Get one that goes along with your riff, play along with it, and then try to flow into a new riff, making sure you're sticking with the same tempo and time signature. If you try to write a song without a tempo or a drum beat or a metronome helping you in the background, a lot of times your riffs aren't going to mesh well and they're not going to flow into each other. If people can't bang their head along to your song, they're probably not going to want to listen to it again. You can download a metronome to play along with on your phone, or look up some drum beats here on YouTube and play along with those. Another important thing to keep in mind is having some contrast in your riffs. You can do this within one riff or from one riff to another. You can keep things very simple and have a verse and a chorus that use the same riff but with a different dynamic. For example, let's say we have a simple power chord riff that goes like this. It has a very open feel to it with those power chords ringing out. If you tighten that up with some palm muting, you can change the whole feel of the riff while keeping it tied together with the song. Switching between variations of riffs like that can really help fill out your song and keep it coherent. You also want to think about how your riffs can contrast with each other and complement each other. If you have a really complex riff that's kind of your main idea for the song, you don't want to overcomplicate the song and have too much going on with every riff being super complex. If you have a riff that has a more complicated lead line going on, or if it's moving to some higher frets and then jumping around all over the guitar, try to contrast that with another riff. Maybe simplify it, just a basic kind of power chord riff. You want to make sure you're leaving room for that riff to shine, and also for the other instruments in the song to have their place. If you have a really crazy complex riff going on, it's not going to be a good spot for the vocals to be going on. If you're planning on adding a solo to your song, you want to have a relatively simple riff going on underneath the solo to give that lead guitar space to shine. A very important aspect of the song, and often underlooked by guitar players, is the drums of the song. A very simple riff can be made into something amazing by just having an awesome drum beat underneath. You can make your own drum beats on your computer or however you're recording music. If you are also a drummer or you know a drummer, It's 1,000 times better to get them to play along with your riff and come up with something that will complement it. Playing along with a drummer or a drum beat can also be great for coming up with ideas and helping guide you into the next part of the song. Writing songs is just like any other aspect of an instrument and playing music, in that you're going to need to practice it and write songs that maybe don't turn out so well before you can write really great ones that you really like. For starting out writing songs, I highly recommend sticking to a very basic song structure. Your riffs don't have to be basic. They can be crazy, as off the wall as you want them to, but you want your song to have structure. The standard verse, chorus, bridge, chorus format for songs, very tried and true, works. There's a reason it's used so often. For that format, you only need 3 riffs. You can really leave out the bridge and only do 2 riffs if you want to. I highly recommend trying out writing songs that only use 2 or 3 riffs. And they don't need to be super long songs either. A lot of great bands out there have really short songs, 2 or 3 minutes. Don't overcomplicate them. If you put out a 10-minute song, most people aren't even going to make it through the entire thing. I can't stress enough, really try to keep things nice and concise if you want to make songs that people are actually going to listen to. When you're trying to come up with the next riff in your song, in my opinion, the best way to do it is to put on your drum track or your metronome, play the riff that you have a few times over, 4 to 8 times, and then just try to let your hands guide you and jump into something else. You can keep it around the same spot if you're using certain frets. If you're someone who's into music theory and you're using a certain scale or a certain chord progression, you know what key you're in, you can try to work with those concepts and come up with something else to go along with it. But you want to make sure you have something that's flowing into itself. You don't want a very jarring transition from one riff to another. Stick with the groove of the song and let it take you to another place on the fretboard. And last thing, but also very important, don't dwell on a song forever. If you have a riff that you really like, but you can't seem to come up with anything for it right now, come back to it later. Work on a different song or just do something else with your time. Sometimes your brain is going to need time to rest and come up with new ideas. If you have other musicians you can play with, that's also a great way to come up with stuff. You guys can always collaborate together. And sometimes they can come up with a riff that will go with your song. 2 heads are often better than 1. If you guys have any questions about this, feel free to ask me in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you want more content just like this, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a great one.